I really do think we're onto something.
Failing to learn this lesson. We face decades-long failings that have held back British working people and indeed British businesses. Failings that make us less productive and less competitive than we need to be. Friends, this is the scale of our productivity problem as a country. We produce nearly 20% less per hour work than the other G7 countries. The gap is actually at its highest level for 25 years. And that makes us all poorer. We can't be a richer country, we can't be a fairer country, we can't be a country which pays down the deficit unless we're a more productive country. So our plan is a change from this government and their view of how Britain prospers, because we recognise that wealth creation comes from all and not just a few. And it is a change from Labour's past as well. Recognising we can't simply succeed with redistribution or with tax and spend, but we must reform the way our economy works to make us more productive. It's a modern industrial strategy for Britain's businesses and Britain's working families to succeed together. A route map for turning the fortunes of working people in our country around. A plan for every sector, every firm, to raise productivity and make bigger profits and create inclusive prosperity. Pro-business, but not business as usual. Now, in order to do this, it's going to require every part of our country, government, business and workers, to step up. And I want to explain to you what our plan involves. But let me start with skills. JLR transformed its fortune by transforming the skills of its workforce. And our country's got to learn that lesson as well. I think for too long as a country, we somehow believed that we can succeed with some people having access to world-class education, training and skills. So our plan starts with a revolution in vocational education. A new gold standard vocational baccalaureate in our schools. New technical degrees at our universities. And real high-quality apprenticeships as well. At the moment, just 1 in 10 employers in England offers an apprenticeship. There are in fact 6 times fewer high-quality apprenticeships than there are in Germany. Now, there's been lots of debate about tax avoidance in the last few weeks. Nothing more symbolises the current government's failing plan than seeing the tax gap between what should be paid and the revenue received widening, while the number of apprenticeships for young people is actually falling. We can do better. And with our plan, we will do better. The public sector playing its part with thousands of apprenticeships. Every firm that wins a major government contract required to deliver apprenticeships. Every firm recruiting from outside the EU required to do the same. With businesses having more control over the funding. Rights and responsibilities throughout our society. It's time to match the aspirations of our young people with the high-quality apprenticeships they deserve. So today I can announce that under the next Labour government, if you get the grades at 18, you will be guaranteed an apprenticeship. That's what I mean by a better plan for young people, a better plan for working people, and a better plan for Britain. The next challenge is to support small businesses. I think we all know that the jobs of tomorrow will come not simply from a small number of large businesses, but a large number of small businesses. And it's by helping our small and medium-sized businesses of today that they can actually become the large businesses of tomorrow. And our plan recognises that. We will have a fairer tax system, keeping corporation tax the lowest in the G7. But with us, the first priority, not further tax cuts for large businesses, but helping smaller ones. So we will cut and freeze business rates, and we won't just cut taxes for small businesses, but we'll improve finance as well. Our plan recognises that our banks are still not sufficiently the servants of small business, that they must be if businesses are to succeed. So we'll create a British investment bank to support new regional banks, and we'll have a market share cap so we can have more competition in business banking on the high street. Now the insight that we need to help every working person and every firm also applies to every part of Britain. I take a simple view. We're too unproductive as a country because we're too centralised as a country. Because local people and businesses don't have sufficient power over what matters to them. We know what makes the successful towns and cities. Devolution to Scotland and Wales has worked. It's time for devolution in England as well. And Labour is the only party with a comprehensive, not a piecemeal plan for devolution. And a plan that meets the challenge in the scale of resources, devolving power and funding worth at least £30 billion over 5 years in employment services, transport, housing, skills, and business support. And our plan is also about creating long-term, sustainable prosperity for our country. Some people believe that the old way of creating wealth is working for Britain. I don't agree. Too often we've mistaken fast-spark wealth creation for long-term wealth creation. Too often we've been a country which values hedge funds more than manufacturing, but rewards speculation, not long-term investment. That somehow privileges consuming today over investment for tomorrow. Now, of course, this starts with government getting its house in order. So we will make sure British businesses have the infrastructure they need to succeed. An independent National Infrastructure Commission to stop long-term decisions, as they have been for a long time, being delayed and delayed. But we also need to reform the environment in which business operates. Tata's takeover of JLR was good for business and good for Britain. But too often, takeovers lead simply to speculative activity, not the long-term interests of business or the country. So we will reform the rules on takeovers so that long-term investors have a louder voice. We'll ensure executive pay is connected to performance by putting an everyday employee on the remuneration committees of firms. And let me say this at JLR. There is no more important long-term security for our country than our place in the European Union. I believe the real threat to prosperity after the general election will be to leave the EU. Under a Labour government, Britain will be a strong and proud member of a reformed European Union. So here are the foundations of our better economic plan. Skills for all our young people, not just a few. Support for all businesses, not just the largest. Thriving towns and cities in every part of Britain. And a long-term view that I believe our country needs. All built on a commitment to cut the deficit every single year and to balance the books in the next Parliament. Not to go back to the 1930s, with public spending shrunk as a share of national income to levels which will undermine our productivity and competitiveness as a country. Under our plan, outside protected departments, spending will fall until the books are balanced. But we won't undermine our economy by the decisions we make. So the education budget will rise year on year, protected against inflation. Because there is no more important investment in our country's future. I believe there is a choice of two plans for this election. The government's failing plan, carrying on as we are, claiming the economy is a success, but too often it works only for a handful of people at the top. Or a new plan, a better plan, that says this economy can only succeed for working families if Britain as a whole succeeds. A plan built on the truth that Britain cannot prosper for long as a country where a few do well, while most of the country falls behind. I think we need a better plan to replace an economy where tens of billions are lost in tax avoidance with an economy where tens of thousands more of our young people get apprenticeships. We need a better plan to help millions more businesses grow, succeed, and create wealth. We need a better plan to make us more productive as a country, more inclusive in our prosperity, with every person in Britain feeling they have a stake in the future and a stake in our economy. This is Labour's plan for a better future, and now I'm going to introduce Ed Balls.
Thank you very much. As Ed has said, our prosperity plan for stronger growth and higher productivity is based on open markets and wealth creation and unlocking the potential and talent of all companies, large and small, and all working people. As Ed said, we will not turn away from Europe, our largest market, because our world-beating companies like Jaguar Land Rover know that stability and certainty in our relationship with Europe is vital for investment and creating good jobs. But we will bang the table for reform and ensure our voice is heard. And we're not going to stand aside and duck reform and wait for productivity to rise in the end or wealth to trickle down. We will invest in science, we'll support innovation, we'll devolve economic power, we will invest in the infrastructure and the skills and apprenticeships which all companies, large and small, depend upon. All things recommended that we need to do by the Executive Director of Jaguar Land Rover, Mike Wright, in his excellent report on the manufacturing supply chain, which set out what we need to do to back large flagship investments like the one we're in today, but also the small companies and the many jobs which depend upon this supply chain. But this plan for growth and higher productivity, what we call inclusive prosperity, in the commission that I chaired with the former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, is not only about more profit, more investment, more growth, more living standards. It's also vital to deliver another goal, which we must address in the next Parliament for our country, and that is to balance our nation's books. Because we know now, after the last 5 years, that simply relying on cutting public spending to do that job doesn't work. In this Parliament, George Osborne promised to balance the books and get the national debt falling in this Parliament. On both counts, he's failed. And the reason is slow growth, sluggish productivity, stagnant wages means that the tax revenues just haven't come in as expected. The government is billions short on its plans. And to make up that shortfall, George Osborne has now said he's going to carry on with even bigger public spending cuts in the next Parliament, a third bigger in the next 4 years than we've seen in the last 4 years, the biggest cuts in public spending and investment of any developed country in the next 5 years. I don't think that plan is remotely credible. But if it's carried out, it won't only hit families and our public services, it will also undermine the economic infrastructure, the investment and skills which companies like this depend upon to create jobs and growth. That's why we will take a different approach, a tough but balanced plan to balance the books. We'll cut the deficit every year. We'll get the books into balance in the next Parliament and the national debt falling in the next Parliament as soon as we can in the next Parliament. We'll have no promises in our manifesto paid for by more borrowing. We will cut spending, as Ed said, in non-protected areas every year until we balance the books. And just as every successful business looks at every pound it spends to cut out waste and inefficiency and to get the best productivity, so our zero-based review is examining every pound government spends to find ways in which we can cut out waste and shift to different priorities. We'll also make difficult decisions like capping child benefit, taking the winter allowance away from the richest 5% of pensioners, and reversing this government's big tax cut for the top 1% of earners. We will act to strengthen growth and productivity too, though, because that prosperity plan we're setting out today is vital to bring in the tax revenues to balance the books in a fair and sustainable way. Our plan is pro-business, but not business as usual. It's about promoting competition, not turning a blind eye to bad practice. It's about supporting wealth creation, but making sure everyone pays their fair share. It's about growth, it's about living standards, and it's about deficit reduction too. That is what we're setting out today, a better plan for Britain's prosperity. Now over to our Shadow Energy and Climate Change Secretary, Caroline Flint.
Thanks very much, Ed. And as Ed Milliband said, I can't think of a better place to launch Labour's better plan for Britain's prosperity than here at Jaguar Land Rover in Wolverhampton. 2 centuries ago, cities like Wolverhampton were transformed by the Industrial Revolution. Wolverhampton was known throughout the world for its lock-making, its iron and steel, and the Black Country rang to the sound of engineering and innovation. And today that tradition continues with firms like Jaguar Land Rover. Our plan for Britain's prosperity starts with supporting and strengthening great firms like this. Now, in my area of energy and climate change, our determination to create a competitive energy market will keep costs down for businesses like yours. But I believe also that our country is on the verge of a new great industrial revolution. Like the railways of the 19th century, the highways of the 20th century, the superhighway of the 21st century, a clean energy industrial revolution will transform our society from a high-carbon nation to a low-carbon economy. Now, I have no doubt that cities like Wolverhampton can lead the country and Britain can lead the world in that revolution, creating new jobs and industries to underpin our prosperity in the future. There are those that think that tackling climate change will be a burden on our economy. They are wrong. As the world faces up to the challenges of climate change, the race to create and sell solutions to make our economy cleaner and leaner will intensify. Across energy generation, energy efficiency, housing, infrastructure and transport, the right framework and direction will increase the chances of British firms succeeding and British workers gaining new opportunities, just as Jaguar Land Rover are doing here with lightweight, high-tech, low-emission engines. Government cannot create these jobs, businesses must. But government is critical to set the policy to support the sectors and types of businesses to underpin our future success as a country. That's why the next Labour government is committed to setting a target to make our power supply carbon-free by 2030, giving firms the confidence and certainty to invest in our future energy supply, and strengthening the Green Investment Bank with more and proper borrowing powers. Our ambition for Britain is not just an assembly point for products built elsewhere, but a hub for manufacturing and innovation with the turbines, engines and reactors that will power our country stamped with Made in Britain. If we miss this opportunity, we will repeat the mistakes of the 1980s. Countries like Germany and Denmark saw the potential of wind power and they created world-beating firms. Britain missed out. If we get it right, the prize is real. Hundreds of thousands of jobs, productive, skilled, secure, well-paid jobs at every level, and opportunities for all across our nation. An economy where hard work pays, responsibility and enterprise are rewarded, and everyone plays by the same rules. That's our plan for Britain's future, building on our strengths as a country, drawing on the talents of all, the best path to Britain's prosperity, the only plan to secure our future. I'm very proud to be here today because I think it shows that Labour understands that across government, Secretaries of State need to work together to provide a positive environment for businesses to start and to grow. And nobody knows that better than our next speaker, Chuka Umunna.
Thanks, Caroline. It is fantastic to be here with you today at Jaguar Land Rover to launch our plan for prosperity. And as Ed intimated, this is a real British success story, a jewel in the crown of our resurgent automotive industry. The resurgence of the automotive industry has proved the truth that was for far too long, in my view, in Britain heresy. That great companies succeed in strong sectors. It has been one of the critical missing pieces of Britain's growth model. We need competitive markets so that firms are efficient and consumers get a fair deal. We need rules of the game that support and encourage firms to build for the longer term. But on top of this, though, we also need strong sectors for those things that no firm can do alone. Training skilled workers, developing new materials, technologies and working practices, ensuring there is committed intelligent finance for our businesses, developing the support infrastructure to export. This approach, industrial activism, begun with Lord Mandelson during our time in office, and it's proven its value in the automotive industry and others. And let me be clear, in relation to work those sectors and others like the creative industries are already engaged in, our message to you on the strategies, the bodies already in place, is one of continuity. Continuity wherever possible, change only where necessary. In addition, we know that even the best sectoral strategy is more effective when it is driven by a committed and coordinated whole government approach, as Caroline was saying, on procurement, on finance, on infrastructure and innovation. Because now, as our plan for prosperity sets out, we have got to go further and spread the impulse to innovate right across the economy. We must transform Britain from a nation of innovative sectors to a nation of innovators. It is only by marrying innovation and inclusion that we can meet the productivity challenge our nation faces, improve the experience of work for most people, raise living standards, and as Ed Ball said, balance the books. This is the way to ensure that everyone has a stake in the future, and most importantly, that the next generation can always do better than the last. So we will broaden the focus of industrial strategy, spreading the benefits of the sectoral approach beyond high-value export-focused sectors to include those where the majority of people in our country are employed. Because the same insight is true. Where firms in a sector work together to train the people, develop the new technologies, find new ways of working, trade expertise, it makes it easier for each individual firm to pursue higher value strategies, make bigger profits, pay higher wages, and create more secure jobs. This is the way we will raise productivity, pay down the deficit, and create more balanced, sustainable, and inclusive growth. This is the way we will earn and grow our way to higher living standards for everybody. This is the only plan, the better plan for a more prosperous Britain. Thank you.